Hello and welcome. I'm Geeta Mohan and you're watching India Today Global. Now, India's Foreign Minister, Dr. Jaishankar, has embarked on a 3-day visit to Russia. A very crucial visit at a time when India faces highest tariff rate in the world. The US has slapped India with an additional 25% tariff for buying Russian oil. A top aide in the Trump administration, Stephen Miller, had accused India of effectively financing Russia's war in Ukraine by purchasing oil from Moscow. It also comes at a time when US President has met both Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Zelensky to find a peaceful resolution to the Russia-Ukraine conflict.
After the visit of Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi to India, it's now Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar who's embarked on a 3-day visit to Russia. The visit comes amid India-US tariff hike. India has been slapped with additional 25% tariff for purchasing Russian oil. The total tariff is now 50%, the highest in the world. The visit also comes after a much anticipated meeting between the United States and the Russian presidents in Alaska. Jaishankar also co-chairs the 26th session of the India-Russia Intergovernmental Commission on Trade, Economics, Scientific, Technological and Cultural Cooperation. Besides addressing the India-Russia Business Forum, Jaishankar will hold bilateral talks with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. Though President Trump has called India a friend, the actions speak otherwise. Trump on earlier occasions has accused India of not caring about the number of Ukrainians being killed by Russia and selling Russian oil in the open market for profits. He also called the economies of India and Russia dead. The US rationale for levying additional tariffs on India is that it's a way to deter Russia from pursuing the Ukraine war.
Look, the president has put tremendous public pressure to bring this war to a close. He's taken actions, as you've seen, sanctions on India and other actions as well. He's made himself very clear that he wants to see this war end. And he has scoffed at the ideas of others that have been raised that we should wait another month before any meeting takes place. The president wants to move and he wants to bring this war to an end as quickly as possible.
Trump's claims are being trumpeted by his Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who says that India has been profiteering from reselling Russian oil. India at the onset had called the sanctions unjustified. But Russia has stood by its ally India and said that Russia would welcome Indian markets with open arms.
The Russian market is, would welcome Indian imports to the most extent possible. So don't worry about that. So as far as energy is concerned, indeed, so we see that actually that would be quite detrimental to the global economic stability and energy security. As we discussed before, Russia is the largest producer of oil. India is the largest consumer. Any kind of unilateral actions lead to disruptions in supply chains, lead to imbalance in pricing policies. So it would potentially lead to price hikes and destabilization of global markets and endangering energy security of developing countries, first of all.
Trump also attributed the tariff on India as the US policy to tackle BRICS and to protect the dollar. But India has always reiterated that it had no plans to replace the US dollar, but only aims for the rupee's global outreach. He also said that India was a difficult market for the US.
Well, we're negotiating right now, and it's also BRICS. They have BRICS, which is basically a group of countries that are anti the United States, and India is a member of that, if you can believe it. It's an attack on the dollar, and we're not going to let anybody attack the dollar. So it's partially BRICS, and it's partially the trade situation. It's the deficit. We had a tremendous deficit. So, as you know, Prime Minister Modi is a friend of mine, but they don't do very much business in terms of business with us. They sell a lot to us, but we don't buy from them. You know why? Because the tariff is so high. They have one of the highest tariffs in the world.
India has always maintained that it's not an era of war. It has also welcomed the recent talks between Trump and Putin. It's a test of friendship for both India and Russia and whether they can withstand the difficult times. With Mahashweta Lala, Bureau Report, India Today.
And joining me from Virginia is Crystal Call, NATO advisor and former U.S. congressional candidate from Virginia. Thank you so much, Crystal, for joining us. It is a very important development when it comes to Trump-Putin meeting, Trump meeting with Zelensky, but Trump has indeed threatened India with consequences, and yet we see India's External Affairs Minister Jaishankar headed to Moscow. He'll be holding talks with Sergei Lavrov. How do you see this?
Well, I think that Trump has threatened India with consequences, and yet Jaishankar's headed to Moscow, right? So I see this as a strategic move by India to show Trump and the rest of the world that they're not scared of Trump's threats and that they believe the tariffs will not last long. So I think it's a very strategic move by Jaishankar in how he responded, and I think right now we're looking at just power plays by Trump, and then India's response and vice versa. And I think that's a lot more what's at play than maybe even what is being said in these meetings, to be honest.
Very interesting, Crystal. You put it very rightly. This is power play, but how does Europe read these developments against India? Since most benefited from the Russian crude when India bought it, refined it, and then sold it to European nations.
I think the EU has actually already imposed sanctions on Nayara Energy Oil, which almost 50% is owned by Russia. The EU and India are in talks of a trade deal that they hope to conclude by the end of 2025, which may not include Russian oil. And it seems that the EU is in a position of condemning Russia's invasion of Ukraine and exploring new trade opportunities to adjust. So that is my read on the situation.
Again, but for India, Crystal, Russia is an important and a traditional partner. And Trump has also shifted position and in all that, where do you think it leaves particularly the NATO and Europe?
Well, I'm speaking in my own capacity, right? I am a NATO advisor, but as I mentioned before, Europe and NATO are in a phase of adjustment. If they want to completely cut any ties to Russia, direct or indirect, they have to do a lot of work in order to achieve that. The EU has already prepared emergency countermeasures in case Trump imposes extreme tariffs against them. So I think this is a time where we're going to see a lot of unification across the NATO countries, and we're going to see countries banding together in response to Trump's actions.
India is a significant player in the region. If we talk about strategic autonomy, Crystal, it is essential for Europe, it's essential for Ukraine, and most countries have now started talking about how their interest is paramount and self-interest is something that every country is going to look at. Then why can't India exercise its strategic autonomy as well when it comes to Russia, which, by the way, Trump also is one of the rare presidents who wants to really deal with President Putin? Then why is it that India is being slapped with secondary sanctions just for dealing and continuing to deal with Russia?
I mean, I think this goes back to the creation of India and what was going on geopolitically, right, with the Cold War. I mean, Nehru took a stance of non-alignment, which the U.S. viewed was, they had a very strong policy of you're with us or against us. And it was viewed as tilted non-alignment. India was dubbed as pink, and India has been in that box ever since. Yes, there were some efforts made, and I think there's been progress since the U.S.-India nuclear deal. There's been progress since having, visits to the U.S. by a few prime ministers, the G20 summit, all of that. But very quickly, all of that has unraveled with Trump being in power and basically using all of that against India. Again, I think India, geopolitically and strategically, took agricultural subsidies from Russia at a time when they were dealing with famine and droughts, right? They were a young country and the prime minister was looking out for his people. I don't think it had anything to do with communist leanings or political association or affiliation of any means, but that is how we lived in a bipolar world, and to an effect now I think Trump is trying to put us back in that type of bipolar state. So I think that to come out of it, India India's best move right now is to just find strategic allies with Japan, with EU, with countries that are also facing similar pushback, facing these sorts of tariffs, and to really just disassociate any sort of trade it has with Russia to political affiliation or support what Russia's doing necessarily in the Ukraine. I think that they should be completely separated out, and I think that that distinction is what is critical for India to do today.
Okay, very briefly, Crystal, before I let you go, the fact that there are two very critical meetings that took place, do you really think, it's rare, but do you really think that President Trump can broker peace between Russia and Ukraine?
I think he has the power to do so because he's the president of the United States, and I think the seat has power for sure. I think he is motivated to do so because he really wants a Nobel Peace Prize, which he's tweeted about almost 10 times. Will he actually do it? Potentially. I mean, if he maybe looks at some of the tactics that have worked historically when brokering a peace deal, and I think also leaning on other heads of states to help. I think that, yes, we can get there. But again, I think it does require some strategic awareness of geopolitics. And I think that it's also one that in today's day and age will need to be viewed more in a multilateral approach. I think that's been effective in the past. And that is typically how democratic nations respond to such types of situations. So I hope that Trump will do what's right for the country. But again, I stand with Democrats when I say that I definitely worry about the future state of affairs for both the American public and for what's going on in Russia, Ukraine today.
Right. Crystal Call, thank you so much for joining us here on the network. Now, we are looking at a very defiant India. Why do I say that? Is because despite all the threats, the pressure from Washington, External Affairs Minister of India, Dr. Jaishankar, is headed to Moscow. What does that mean for the United States of America, for India, and how India stands with Russia? Here's my take on statecraft, an excerpt from the larger show on our YouTube channel, India Today Global, but watch the excerpt. Trump is turning up the heat, slapping tariffs and sanctions on India for its Russian ties. But how will India battle these threats? The country has faced pressure before and found ways to protect its interests. Yet, this challenge feels sharper. Defense deals, energy security, and global credibility all hang in the balance. As External Affairs Minister, Dr. Jaishankar is to meet his counterpart Sergei Lavrov in Moscow, the stakes are sky high. Can India navigate Washington's wrath, defend its autonomy, and emerge stronger, or will Trump's threats force difficult compromises? Hello and welcome. You're watching Statecraft with me, Geeta Mohan. This isn't India's first sanction storm. Washington once forced New Delhi to cut Iranian oil before grudgingly granting a waiver for Chabahar port given its strategic importance. India insists it does not recognize country-specific sanctions, yet it repeatedly finds itself cornered. Unlike Iran, Russia is central to India's defense and energy. A new tariff war, oil pressure, and threats of secondary sanctions now hang over India-US ties. Will Jaishankar's Moscow mission offer a shield or deepen the storm? India has long maintained that it does not accept country-specific sanctions. This principle was tested in the Iran case, where New Delhi first lost access to discounted oil, then scrambled for waivers. And then it secured an exception for the Chabahar port, only to eventually stop importing Iranian crude under relentless US pressure. The irony was striking. India kept saying it would not bow, but the reality of energy security and diplomatic costs forced a retreat. Now the same cycle looms, but with far higher stakes. Unlike Iran, where oil was the main factor, India's ties with Russia cut to the bone of its military and energy security. This is where the Jaishankar-Lavrov meeting takes center stage. The agenda is thick with urgency. Energy, defense, payments multipolarity, all are on the table. With Trump tightening the screws, India and Russia are working overtime on payment systems, rupee-ruble trade, non-dollar settlements, mechanisms to bypass US financial choke points. The Jaishankar-Lavrov meeting is not just another diplomatic handshake. It's India's line in the sand. The message to Trump is simple. India will not be dictated to. India's strategy is clear. Project defiance, negotiate quietly, diversify markets and buy time. Whether Trump escalates or recalibrates, New Delhi is determined to prove that its autonomy is not for sale. The battle is not just with Washington, it is with history, with the precedent of bending under pressure, with the need to define India's place in a turbulent multipolar world. Now, US President Donald Trump and Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban spoke regarding Ukraine's talks with the European Union about joining the bloc, according to a White House official. Now, two leaders also discussed the possibility of the Hungarian capital of Budapest serving as host for potential future talks between Russian President Putin and President Zelensky. Hungary is one of the few European places that Putin could visit without fear of arrest by the decree of the International Criminal Court on charges of war crimes, since Orban maintains close ties with the Russian leader. Earlier, according to sources, Putin had suggested Moscow as the meeting venue, but Zelensky had refused. Though Trump claimed the US can assist in the coordination of security guarantees to Ukraine, but ruled out placing American soldiers in Ukraine. The president also said in the interview that he is optimistic that a deal can be reached to end the Russian invasion, but he underscored that Ukraine will have to set aside its hope of getting back Crimea, which was seized by Russian forces in the year 2014, and its long-held aspirations of joining the NATO military alliance.
When it comes to the security guarantees, what is the current status of that? I know the president earlier today mentioned boots on the ground would be UK, France, Germany possibly, but unequivocally said no US troops on the ground, but US coordination. Can you elaborate on that, and what would the red lines be?
Sure. Well, you got to the heart of what I was going to say to all of you today on security guarantees, which is the president has definitively stated US boots will not be on the ground in Ukraine, but we can certainly help in the coordination and perhaps provide other means of security guarantees to our European allies. The president understands security guarantees are crucially important to ensure a lasting peace, and he has directed his national security team to coordinate with our friends in Europe, and also to continue to cooperate and discuss these matters with Ukraine and Russia as well.
I spoke with the former Ukrainian Foreign Minister Pavlo Klimkin, who spoke about what these meetings between President Trump and Putin, President Trump and Zelensky really mean, and can there be lasting peace between Russia and Ukraine? This is what he had to say. Listen in. What is your assessment of what transpired between the US president and the Russian president, and then later between the US president and President Zelensky?
Good afternoon from Kiev, and thanks for standing with Ukraine. Of course, it's about Donald Trump having his skills as a negotiator, as a business negotiator, as a politician, as someone dealing with foreign policy, has been trying to test the Kremlin whether Vladimir Putin is serious in starting any conversation, and I mean real conversation. Secondly, he's been trying to get him to the table and start a structured negotiation process. And third, to figure out what kind of solution could be found. And for that, he is ready and basically willing to use different tactics, but mainly kind of stick and carrot tactics, which is, as I understand, kind of very much loved by him. So it's basically what we saw in Alaska and in the run-up to Alaska, and what we saw in our discussion with Donald Trump, and also in the presence with a number of European leaders. And actually, it was quite a unique show of European solidarity. I've been doing European politics for 35 years.
I know, we
And-
will be talking about that. But you thought
Okay.
that solidarity is important, Mr. Klimkin, because nothing really came out of it when it comes to Trump. He's made it very clear. He's not negotiating on behalf of anybody that they have to meet. And also that there were reports which very clearly suggested that Ukraine has to give up the Donbas region, which is Donetsk and Luhansk, and Crimea.
First, Donald Trump sees himself as a kind of moderator in these negotiations. It's his point that it's not his war, it's coming from the previous reality, and he's been trying to sort it out. Secondly, he clearly understands, and he made this point a number of times, it's only about him. Who could